Jonathan Gannon to the Arizona Cardinals. Is that the first one on here? Yes, it is. So the Cardinals hired Jonathan Gannon, the former Eagle DC, obviously, who has coached since 2007. And just a little bit on his resume to kind of bring some light to what he's done. So he was the Falcons defensive quality control coach in '07, spent a little bit of time with the Titans doing the same, coached some defensive backs in Minnesota from 14 to 17. Did the same with Indianapolis with defensive backs from 18 to 20. Obviously, he was a DC for the Eagles from last year to this year. And then now he is the Arizona Cardinals head coach. He was also an executive, he was a college scout and a pro scout with the Rams from 2009 to 2011, looks like. So pretty solid. Not a bad resume, right? He's had some time throughout the NFL. Clearly he's very highly acclaimed from what he just did with that Eagles offense. But is it all that it's cracked up to be? And what is the true grade on this head coaching hire? So last year with the defense, they were number 2 overall with about 302 yards given up per game. They were first overall with passing yards with 180 yards, and they were dead middle of the pack at 17th in rush yards per game, giving up about 122. And they were 8th in defensive points per game, giving up 20. One thing I noticed this year, the NFL was very defensive. I want to say the worst team in the league only gave up 26 points a game. And that's major considering we had the Seahawks giving up 35, 40 points a game, 400, 500, and 600 yards of offense. Not literally that much, but we know the comparison from, 26 points for the worst defense in the league gave up 26 points a game. That was just kind of a shocker to me. Now in the postseason, they were second in total yards, they were first in passing yards, and they were also 5th worst in rush yards per game, but 3rd overall best in points. So, off the rip, I'm a big Kyler Murray fan, and that's kind of coming back to bite me in the ass here lately, but I loved how he played at Oklahoma. Clearly a Heisman winner, clearly a number 1 overall pick, clearly very talented, throws one of the best footballs in the league, but he's got commitment issues. He's not issues, but he's got commitment questions. He's got health questions. He's, been bickering with coaches, bickering with players. You have players' parents coming out and saying like, yeah, we don't really know how we feel about him. So again, off the rip, I didn't like the move. Again, there's questions about Kyler Murray out here, but we know at the end of the day with his play style, he needs not only an offensive minded head coach, which, Cliff Kingsbury was, but he needs a very smart head coach as well, a guy that it can apply his mind to the game, really get to know the X's and O's and propel this team. I get it. They started 7-0. They finished the season 11-5. So they went, under 500 down the stretch. So, it's kind of like with Baker Mayfield, and Ryan Tannehill, a couple years back. You can catch a lightning in a bottle, comparing this to how, Kingsbury kind of had some positivity going with that 7-0 record. But if you can't sustain it, you're going to have questions around you. And just like we do now with Baker Mayfield and Ryan Tannehill. Now, when you look at Jonathan Gannon, he does have awesome culture, it seems like, and he did just come off an amazing season with the Eagles. There's no question about that. But we don't know how much of that was really Jonathan Gannon, how much of that was Shane Steichen, and how much of that was Nick Sirianni in terms of actually creating that entire awesome culture of the team. Of course, we know he held down the defense, but we're going to get into why that wasn't necessarily all that it cracked up to be. So again, we don't know how much of that was, building the culture from the OC to the head coach, obviously, to the DC as well, like I just mentioned. But also with the super weak schedule as well, and the Cowboys, when they were fully healthy, dropped 40 points on, yes, a Jalen Hurtless Eagles. We know that. We can go back and check the stats. We know he didn't play, but that was still on that defense of Jonathan Gannon. So you cannot look away from that. That is a game that happened, and that was kind of the concern. And then it, of course, came forward in the Super Bowl, didn't show up in the second half, and they gave up almost damn near the same amount of points with 38. And then boom, going, looking at my notes here, 24 second half, it's given up to the Chiefs after you were up by 10. Patrick Mahomes literally has one incompletion, which wasn't even an incompletion. It was a throwaway. So every time he threw the ball to the receiver, it was caught. And then the Eagles get torched. And with 2 of the exact same plays we saw with the motion when they overcompensate, shout out to Dougie Fresh, whatever y'all want to call him. Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore just getting wide open on those plays. So, this seems to be way too soon for Jonathan Gannon, realistically. And the Cardinals, I know they want to change their identity so quick from last year. They were with an offensive coach like Cliff Kingsbury, super blitz-heavy defensive coordinator who, no joke, sent cover 0 more than anybody in the NFL last year. And clearly that was a flop. You had the 2nd worst defense in terms of points per game last year, and you had the 9th worst passing defense. People were throwing it all over the yard, and people were scoring it all over the yard on you. and the numbers show that. And now they want to go to a culture guy who runs these passive defenses in these big moments, clearly like we saw in the Super Bowl, clearly like we saw in the Dallas game. So it's tough for a Cardinals team because it feels like so fast. Like Kyler Murray's in great talks. He's in the MVP talks, just a couple seasons back. Like, what's the type of money he's going to make? He looks so special. And now it's like Kyler Murray's all of a sudden, now he's finishing every season hurt, which isn't a surprise, but it sucks that he's finishing every season hurt. He's not getting along with players and coaches. The commitment, obviously. I mean, the fact that they had to put the studying clause in his contract, and I didn't entertain that. I didn't look too much into it, but that story broke and that news broke, and that contract was written that way for a reason. So I say all that to say it's so unfortunate to know that the Cardinals, I thought, kind of had a brighter future ahead of them, even though I didn't like the Kingsbury hire. And it's kind of a oxymoron to say this, but outside of the bad Cliff Kingsbury hire, I thought they looked good. Clearly not the case here. I want to check back into the chat before we continue to go through the show. Again, appreciate everybody that's with us tonight. Yes, trade him. We need so many pieces on offense and defense. Just going back to the Justin Fields thing a little bit, I totally feel you on that, bro. And that's a reason that people are saying they should trade, because they need more than, they need multiple pieces. Yes, they need a quarterback, but they need people to put around that quarterback. And like Darby said, go get him a Marvin Harrison Jr., go get him a JSN out of Ohio State, draft him an offensive line, but maybe they trade, lean into a Stroud, lean into a Young, Richardson, Levis, whatever the case may be, and try to rebuild it from there. So overall, on Jonathan Gannon, I'm going to give that a D. And the big reason is, I feel like it was too soon. They're really trying to do a 180 on this culture and turn it around. And we don't know what that's going to be like. Like, I know he's getting in there and he's happy to work with an elite Kyler Murray. Maybe it works. I hope it works. I love Kyler. I want to buy his jersey, but I have that, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't. So again, I'm going to give this a D. Do I think what he did with the Eagles warranted a head coaching position? No, I don't. Over an Eric Bieniemy? Absolutely not. Over a Byron Leftwich? Absolutely not. I'm going to give this one a D here.